So we're now in Daniel chapter 6, and the setting for Daniel chapter 6 is when King Darius was still the king of the Medes and the Persians. And what I'll do is I'll just read a few verses, the first few verses of the chapter, and then just kind of summarize what the chapter is about, and then we can see, try and see what lessons we can learn even today, um, in September 2025. See what lessons we can learn from this chapter. So, the first verse says, "It pleased Darius to set over the kingdom 120 princes, which should be over the whole kingdom, and over these 3 presidents." So Darius chose 120 princes to be over his kingdom, but above these 120 princes, he set 3 presidents. And it says here, of whom Daniel was first, that the princes might give accounts unto them, and the king should have no damage. Then this Daniel was preferred above the presidents and princes, because an excellent spirit was in him, and the king thought to set him over the whole realm. So after Darius, the second in charge in the kingdom of the Medes and the Persians was Daniel. Then the presidents and princes sought to find occasion against Daniel concerning the kingdom, but they could find none occasion, no fault, for as much as he was faithful, neither was there. Let me just pick up my Bible. Neither was there any error or fault found in him. Then said these men, these princes, and even the presidents, we shall not find any occasion against this Daniel, except we find it against him concerning the law of his God. So yeah, I'll stop reading, but just summarize what follows after that. These evil men who hated Daniel, because not only because he was the second in charge in the kingdom of the Medes and the Persians, but obviously they had an issue with Daniel's religion, which we can assume or deduce from reading the chapter, that most of these men were not of the same religion as Daniel. Remember that Daniel was Jewish, and also another reason why they might have hated him, which is actually mentioned in the chapter later on, is that Daniel was of the Jews that had been the captives that had been brought to Babylon before the Medes and the Persians conquered Babylon. So these wicked men that hated Daniel basically wrote up a petition, which they took to King Darius and asked him to sign it. And the contents of the petition was that no one in the kingdom should worship anyone except the king for 30 days. No one should. Let me just read what it says here. They established a royal statute and to make a firm decree that whosoever shall ask a petition of any god, no one was allowed to make a petition of any god. That includes the God in heaven, because they knew that Daniel was Jewish, and he only believed in the one true God in heaven, whom he worshipped openly, because he used to open the windows in his house and used to pray whilst facing in the direction of Jerusalem, and these men knew that. So they basically stroked the king's ego and flattered the king into signing. This petition was written by these men, these princes and these kings, but the signing for this petition or law to take effect, the king had to sign it. So the king was flattered by these men, and that no one was supposed to seek petition from anyone except from Darius for 30 days. And he signed this petition, forgetting that his first president, Daniel, only worshipped God and would not worship anyone else or seek petition from anyone else, especially when it comes to religious issues. So he signed this petition anyway. And only for these men to basically go and spy on Daniel, and knowing that he would be praying. He used to pray 3 times a day with his windows open, facing in the direction of Jerusalem. And they saw Daniel doing this, and they rushed to the king and said that, ask the king, didn't you sign a petition that no one is allowed to worship or seek petition from anyone except from you for 30 days? And the king confirmed or affirmed that was the case, and they said, well, Daniel is praying to his God, which is against the decree that you've signed, and Daniel actually knew about this petition, but he carried on worshiping his God without being in fear of what was going to happen to him when he was found to be praying to God 3 times a day. So it says that the king regretted his decision to sign this petition, and he labored for almost the whole day trying to find a way in which he could save Daniel, because he knew that Daniel hadn't done anything wrong. He actually liked Daniel. That's why he had made him the first president out of all the other presidents and the princes. But then these men who had written this law, when they realized that the king was delaying and trying to save Daniel, they came back and said, reminded him that the law of the Medes and the Persians cannot be altered, basically Darius commanded that Daniel should be thrown into the den of the lions, because that was basically the punishment, and even a stone was actually set over the opening of the den of lions. But he did say, Darius did say to Daniel that he should pray to his God, and maybe his God will save him. And it says that night the king didn't sleep very well, because of this issue. And early in the morning the next day, he went to the lion's den and shouted to Daniel and spoke to him and asked if his God had saved him. And Daniel replied that God had sent an angel and shut the lion's mouth. And after that, Daniel was pulled out from the lion's den. And then those men who had written this law that caused Daniel to be thrown into the lion's den, it says not only them, but their wives and their children were taken and they were thrown into the lion's den, because the king was angry with what had happened, because he realized that law had been written to target Daniel, basically. And it says that when these men and their wives and their children were thrown into the lion's den, before they even reached the floor of the lion's den, the lions were jumping up and basically attacking them and eating them, basically. Let me just read what it says here. It says, and they cast them into the den of lions, them, their children, and their wives. And the lions had the mastery of them and break all their bones in pieces, or ever. Basically means before they came to the bottom of the den. The lions even attacked them whilst they were, in the air, before they actually fell on the ground. So, and Darius, if I remember correctly, Darius actually made a decree, same as what Nebuchadnezzar had done when he realized that there was only one God who could do such things, to save, like in this case, to save Daniel from the lions. The King Darius wrote, unto all people, nations and languages that dwell in all the earth, peace be multiplied unto you. I make a decree that in every dominion of my kingdom men tremble and fear before the God of Daniel, for he is the living God. He is the living God, and steadfast forever. And his kingdom, that which shall not be destroyed, and his dominion shall be even unto the end. So, yes, Darius seemed to have been a good king in that he recognized the goodness of Daniel, and that's why he gave him such a high position. But maybe he wasn't convinced about the God that Daniel worshipped, But after this, incident where Daniel was thrown into the lion's den, he convinced him that there's only God, the true God in heaven could have done that. Only Daniel's God could have done that, and that's why he made this decree, similar to what Nebuchadnezzar had done when many miracles had been performed, like when Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego had been thrown into the fiery furnace. You know, he made a decree, but it took a long time for Nebuchadnezzar to be convinced. So I was saying, after going through the chapter, it's a very interesting story, yes, but what can we learn from it? Um, this story is kind of similar to what happened in the book of Esther, when also a decree was made through the shenanigans of Haman, who was also like second in charge in the kingdom. When I think it was Artaxerxes, who was the husband to Esther, was king. He wrote this law that the Jews should be destroyed, and some of that was because Mordecai had refused to bow before him. So I was just saying, yes, very similar to the book of Esther, but what can we learn from these stories? What we can learn is that in the future, there are going to be laws that are going to be made to persecute Christians. Christians, by the way, are already being persecuted. I'm sure you guys watching this video already know that they're already being persecuted, and Christians have been persecuted since the time the early Christian church was set up to now. And I'll just say it here, without beating about the bush. The ones behind the persecution is the at first it was pagan Rome, the pagan Roman Empire, but now obviously that position, pagan Rome's position, was taken over by the Catholic Church. You can call it the Vatican, the Catholic Church. It's the same system. Basically, what pagan Rome did is that it put on a Christian garb and started claiming that they were the true Christians, and started persecuting God's true Christians. So the ones behind the persecution, that's to uh, emphasize that the ones behind the persecution today is the Catholic Church, because the Catholic Church doesn't like competition. They want to be recognized as the only true church, yet they are not. So if you look at the persecution that's happening in Nigeria, the Christians who are being persecuted in Syria, and even in Western countries like the UK, where street preachers are being arrested and being falsely accused of being homophobic, which is something that was conjured up to obviously target Christians. All this, and not just in the UK, in Europe in general, and even in places like America and Australia and other places around the world, Christians they're having their freedom of speech stripped from them, and their other rights being stripped from them, because this is a form of persecution. So, so I was saying, in the future there is going to be what's called the death decree that's going to be signed against Christians, and part of this is because a lot of Christians are not going to, well, not a lot of Christians, there are going to be a very small minority who are going to be accused of causing, these calamities that are going to come upon the world, especially extreme weather events. Christians in the future are going to be accused of causing those to come upon the earth, because they will not adhere to these climate laws, such as the Sunday law, which I've said many times, but I'll repeat it because there might be someone who's watching this for the first time. There are Sunday laws, or international Sunday laws, that are going to come up, be signed, and the whole world is going to be put under pressure or forced to keep these laws. And the reason for these laws is that it's going to be said that everyone should rest on Sunday to decrease, can I use that word, decrease the emissions that come from cars and the trains, if for countries that use trains that still work with by burning coal, all the emissions that are alleged to cause climate change, which is a false science, by the way. That's not even true. But Sunday laws are going to be introduced so that to slow climate change, because they say that human activity, including me breathing, by the way, causes climate change, which is false. So these laws it's going to be said if everyone rests on Sunday, which is the day, the preferred day of the Roman Catholic Church. It's not Sunday sacredness or Sunday worship is not biblical, but that's going to be foisted on the world to allegedly stop climate change. Because if everyone stays at home on Sunday, then that will bring down emissions, thereby stopping climate change. But I've already said, I'm trying to explain, make sure that everyone understands what exactly is being planned, what the agenda is behind the climate change and Sunday and stuff, so that to stop climate change, which doesn't even exist. So that's what they're planning. And so when I read the book of Esther and I read about Haman, for some reason in my mind I just imagine, I always have this picture of a Jesuit, someone dressed in black with a white collar. I don't know why, but every time I read that book, and I've read it several times, as I've said before, I'm actually reading through the whole Bible from Genesis to Revelation for the 18th time. And I do that because I know that I'll always learn something new every time I read through. And I read other books as well. On top of that, I read history books and other religious or faith-based books that normally banned books or out-of-print books, or books that support what the Bible says. Those are the books I normally read. So every time I read, I find something new. I learn something new. But the book of Esther, in the book of Esther, when I read about Haman, I always picture a Jesuit for some reason, and maybe that's because, well, the ones who are really pulling the strings in the world are the Jesuits, who were set up to fight or destroy Protestantism. But obviously the Jesuits existed before 1540, which is the date we are told that in history that Pope Paul III basically allowed the Society of Jesus, commonly known as Jesuits, to become an order within the Catholic Church. But the Jesuits existed before that. They existed as Illuminati first of all, but before that they existed as Knights Templar. So because when the Knights Templar were abolished by the Pope at the time, I forget his name, they went underground and resurfaced as the Jesuits, and that's why we find that Inigo Loyola, who changed his name to Ignatius, was actually a member of the Spanish Alumbrados, which is Alumbrados in English is Illuminati, and he was actually arrested 2 or 3 times and questioned by the office of the Inquisition, but then he was set free, which is very odd, because when anyone was arrested by the office, the so-called unholy office, which is I like to call the unholy office of the Inquisition, you would never be set free. You would be tortured. Yeah, so these Jesuits are the ones who I liken them to Haman, and I believe they're the ones who are going to bring about this death decree to destroy all Christians. Because remember, God he does things on this earth through human beings, and because Satan is the great counterfeiter, he does the same thing as well. So there are people on this earth who are working as agents, as God's agents, but there are also people who are working as Satan's agents. And the Jesuits, the Jesuits are not only an order within the Catholic Church. There are some historians who have actually called them sorcerers. There are many things. Okay, the Jesuits are many things. They are sorcerers, they are assassins, and all this stuff. So they are working on behalf of Lucifer, now called Satan, and the devil. And one of the agendas of the devil, why I'm bringing all this up, is one of the agendas of the devil is to totally 100% destroy true Christianity here on this earth. It's always been one of his main goals to destroy Christianity, because true Christians represent God. We are like ambassadors for God, and he hates us. And one of the ways that Satan wants to hurt God, because now he can't go up to heaven. Like in the first chapter of the book of Job, we know that even after Satan was cast out, he was still allowed to go to heaven to take part in conferences and meetings, because the meetings that used to happen in heaven, where there were representatives from the other worlds that God has created, and Satan used to go to heaven as representing this earth. But he's always wanted to destroy true Christians. But not so. So the point I was making before I forget is that the devil is not allowed to go to heaven anymore. So what and he can't fight with God like what we read about in Revelation chapter 12. When he says that there was war in heaven, and Satan and his angels fought with God, and eventually got thrown out. He can't fight with God anymore. So what he does is he hurts God's children here on this earth. That's the only way he can hurt God. So let us be steadfast and faithful, even when these laws are introduced to persecute Christians. And not only is there going to be a Sunday law or international Sunday laws that will be introduced, because Sunday is the day that Lucifer is chosen, because the name Lucifer actually means the shining one or the light bearer. So Satan chose the brightest thing in our world to represent him, because he's the shining one. So the brightest shining thing in our world is the sun. That's what he has chosen. Therefore, that's where we get Sunday from. Sometimes we just say, the days of the week, sometimes we just say them without really thinking. They're actually named after pagan gods. So the day Sunday, S-U-N day, is named after, it's the day of the sun, basically. And that's the day that Satan has chosen, because it represents him. So I was talking about how there are Sunday laws coming, but also what will happen is that Christians are going to be put in positions where they are, I'm talking about Sabbath keeping Christians, those who obey what the Bible actually says and don't make excuses about how Sunday is now the Lord's day and all this. There's nowhere in the Holy Scriptures where it says that Sunday is the Lord's day. I'm actually going to make a short video about that, about what day is the Lord's day. The Lord's day is Sabbath, if you read Mark 2:27 and the other texts in the Holy Scriptures. But like I said, I'll make a video about that. Sabbath-keeping Christians are going to be put in a position or pressured to work on Sabbath. Not only will they be required to keep Sunday, which will be against God's commandments and against their conscience, but they'll be pressured to work on Sabbath, thereby breaking God's fourth commandment, which requires us to rest on Sabbath. So that's what we can learn from Daniel chapter 6, and I'll be moving on to Daniel chapter 7, which is actually, I think it's one of my favorite chapters in the book of Daniel. I think followed by, because it's got a lot more information. God uses a teaching technique called repeat and enlarge. So Daniel chapter 7 is basically an enlargement of Daniel chapter 2. He's talking about the same thing, as well as Daniel chapter 8. He's talking about the kingdoms, the major kingdoms that would come upon this earth. So yeah. I hope I've maybe explained Daniel chapter 6 in a way that maybe you haven't heard before. But I encourage everyone to also do their own research, study God's word for yourself. And I hope this was a blessing to you, and I'll see you in the next video.